Fantastic. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. My name is Thomas Grace, and I'll be your host tonight. I am a member of United Electrical Workers Local 203, that's the union down there at City Market. So just briefly, there's a couple of announcements. There's water in the back. Good luck making your way back there. But it's there, I promise. And that announcement aside, I just want to thank everyone for being here. It means a lot to me. 16 years ago, the Nader campaign was my introduction to politics that I could believe in. And the subsequent 16 years has proven that the world needs politics like that. They've only confirmed that the bipartisan project that is the status quo is devastating for people here and around the world. And it's people in this room, like you and I, and people who are speaking tonight, who are going to change that. And so that's enough for me. I'm going to introduce some of our first speakers who are going to give greetings. And just to let everyone know that we will have a discussion period during this as well, so we'll get to that. Okay. Yes, restrooms are through the door up in that corner over there. So thank you. Our first speaker is Sonoma Mize Fox, a union member and organizer of racial justice.
Can you all hear me? I'm not entirely sure which mic to go in. Great. Hi. Wow. I have never seen McClure this full, ever. So I'm a little freaked out right now, so it's going to be fun. But my name is Sonoma Mize Fox, though some of you may know me as the girl who smelled Bernie's armpit that one time and really won't let it go. Really though, it's a funny story, I'll tell you sometime. Anyway, I'm a fellow UE 203 member with Thomas and a racial, climate, food, anything really justice organizer, and I am a Burlington resident. I stand before you all today not only to help introduce the incredible Green Party presidential candidate, Dr. Jill Stein, but also to tell you a story. Because I believe, above all, stories are how we connect. Connecting builds communities, and communities build revolutions. My great-great-grandmother was born on the Caribbean island of St. John. Now, I don't know much about her, but what I do know is that she came from a long ancestral bloodline of sugarcane plantation slaves. I know that my ancestors worked tirelessly, day in and day out, against their will, to make money for those who didn't even consider them human. The struggles continued throughout that bloodline, from my incredibly talented grandmother struggling during an era of legally mandated segregation to become an incredible jazz pianist, to my dad having to defend driving while black, to me having to stand my ground when asked why I don't think it should be all lives matter. Acts of racism in this country may have become more covert, but it does not mean they aren't there. Even in Vermont. I hear stories frequently about resettled refugees being denied job opportunities because their accents were too thick. Of Black Lives Matter lawn signs being stolen or vandalized or connected to thugs. Of people of color getting pulled over at disproportionate rates to white folks. The list goes on. So I fight. I fight because this is absolutely not okay. I fight because my black brothers and sisters helped build the very country we live in and were punished for it. I fight because if you change the date and time of those struggles to today, the same is still true. I fight because I am here. Racial justice spans all sectors of movement work, from keep it in the ground, climate justice, to fight for 15 in a union now, worker justice. All around the country and all around the world, you see people of color rising up and struggling day in and day out on several fronts because they have to. This is not an option for us. This is life or death. In this struggle, in building a revolution, we need leaders, comrades, allies, community members to rise up with us, to make policy changes, to break the rules that are set up to oppress us, to speak up and refuse to stand down. I am so humbled and incredibly honored to help introduce one of those comrades, whom I've watched time and time again stand up and stand with us as a wonderful ally. I have 30 seconds. Her Our Power to the People plan looks at creating sweeping policy changes in the areas of climate action, labor justice, education, the economy, criminal justice, and more. This is someone I would definitely build a revolution with. Thank you.
And our next speaker will be Brian Tokar, a lifelong activist and a Vermont author, whose most recent book, Towards Climate Justice, and he's a member of the Green Party Shadow Cabinet.
Yeah, Brian!
Thank you so much. This is an incredible crowd here in Burlington. I can't remember an event like this, not only in this space, but any time in the recent past here in Burlington or anywhere in Vermont. My story that I want to talk to you about a little goes back to the early years of green politics in this country. Back in the mid-1980s, inspired by the electoral successes of Greens in Europe, people started getting excited about the possibility of creating a green movement here in the US. And there were hundreds of local groups around the country that were rooted in local activism, that were rooted in social movements, and also doing electoral work at the local level. People were involved in all the key movements of that era, fighting for economic and racial justice, just like now, opposing the first Iraq War in the early 1990s. Here in Burlington, it meant standing up against excess development proposals that were rampant here in Burlington, even when Bernie Sanders was mayor. And people like Sandy Baird and Bee Bookchin, who were in the audience, who ran for office as Greens on a campaign of challenging excessive development here in Burlington, just as is so urgently needed right now.
Gentrification.
That's right. Indeed. Unfortunately, for a period of time, we lost that vision of the Greens. As important as it was in 1996 and 2000 that a nationally known figure like Ralph Nader came along and raised crucial progressive issues in those presidential contests, those campaigns, unfortunately, within the Greens kind of served as a vehicle for people who aspired to being pretty conventional kinds of political operatives to take influence in those organizations. And we lost the vision of a party that was primarily rooted in social movements. I think what Jill Stein's campaign represents for us is a return to that original founding vision of green politics. I first met Jill when she came to speak in my area of Vermont at Goddard College in her role as a public health advocate. I followed her early campaign for governor of Massachusetts as a Green, and was really excited when we had the opportunity to vote for Jill Stein in response to the neoliberal moves of the Obama administration in 2012. Unfortunately, in 2012, Jill was not on our Vermont ballot, and we had to write her in. And then 3 or 4 months after the election, people had to go up to the Secretary of State's office and literally count those write-in ballots, because the Secretary of State's office in Vermont doesn't count write-in ballots on its own. So if you have friends, for example, who think their best protest vote is to write in Bernie for president, one, he's not running. 2, those votes will not be counted by the Vermont Secretary of State. So we have a candidate who represents the vision of the Greens, rooted in social movements, who's committed in principle to fighting the excesses of US militarism, and we have the opportunity now to get Jill's name on the ballot and to vote for Jill for real this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And up next we have Kelsey Aaron, a UVM student and an activist with POTOS.
Hi everyone. There's a lot of people here. Welcome. So happy to have Dr. Stein with us today. As Thomas just said, I'm a student at UVM. I just finished my first year. And you know, sometimes I look around and I've been absorbing everything coming in this country right now, and I'm scared for my future, and I'm scared for the future of my own generation. You know, as a student in a public university, it's my home state in Vermont, and my family's still struggling to pay tuition. And you know, I mean, we shouldn't be punished, obviously, for trying to educate ourselves. And I've met so many people who have had to drop out of school just because they can't afford to pay their tuition.
Hold on the mic.
Oh, sorry, I'm short. And some students are even homeless at University of Vermont, and that's not right, and we deserve to have an education where we don't have to fight every day just to learn. I also work with Migrant Justice, which is a group working for treatment of migrant farm workers in Vermont and good working conditions. And the work that these people do in the state of Vermont is really amazing, and just their will to keep going and keep fighting amidst the mass deportations, record a number of deportations in the history of our country, and lest we forget the ball, of course, and just the treatment sometimes really makes me angry, and I think that what we need is a revolution, and Dr. Jill Stein is someone who I truly believe in, and makes me excited for my future sometimes, you know? I mean, it's something and best of all, she is the true feminist female candidate. In this presidential race. I believe in her, and she's fighting for my rights as a student, as an activist, as a woman in this country, and as a young person. And I just really, this is truly the candidate who I want to put my faith into, and definitely the best choice for our future generation to survive and to really be able to, you know, have the land of opportunity, true experience, and what we need is revolution, and she is going to be the one who will foster that. So, thank you.
Thank you. And up next we have Ashley Smith, who's a member of the International Socialist Organization. He's on the editorial board of the International Socialist Review and a frequent contributor to Socialist Worker and socialistworker.org.
Good evening, brothers and sisters. We stand at really a pivotal moment in our country. And there's a choice that everybody's facing, a fork in the road that we're all headed towards. Do we vote for the lesser of two evils, or do we vote for the greater good? That's the choice that we're all facing. I have tremendous hope that people are going to vote for the greater good. largely because Bernie Sanders tapped into something profoundly radical that's developing in American society. The disgust with corporate inequality, the disgust with racism, the disgust with income taxes, the disgust with inequality. And people want to take a stand and fight it and say enough is enough. We've got to stand for what we believe in, not capitulate to the lesser evil and accept politics as usual. There is a tide growing in America that has to be cultivated, fostered, so it can be a real power in our society. And Sanders was right about so many things, all the inequalities of our world, and he was right about Hillary Clinton, that she's a well-paid agent for Wall Street and the Pentagon. And so many of his proposals for immediate reforms to redress the inequalities in our society. And he was right that we do need a political revolution. We do need a social revolution. And we have to put the word out there. We have to fight for socialism, which is the alternative to this capitalist hell that we live in. Woo! Woo! And the campaign also proved that the Democratic Party is an obstacle to that fight. It is rigged for the other side. The corporate backers, the apparatchiks, the elected officials, and the allied organizations rig that party for the establishment candidates like Hillary Clinton. We can't take over this party. It's theirs, not ours. That's why Cornel West was right. Not to follow Bernie Sanders in endorsing Hillary Clinton, but to stand up and say enough is enough with lesser evilism. We have to vote for the greater good. We have to vote for Jill Stein in this upcoming election. Because the reality is, without Jill's candidacy, this would be a dismal choice. A dismal choice between arsenic and cyanide. Both will kill you. They are not a solution to our healthcare problem. Dr. Jill Stein is the solution to that problem. And I don't mean to say that they're identical. There is a difference between Trump and Clinton. It's the difference between the greater and the lesser evil. But I think the argument that we have to make is you can't fight the greater evil by voting for the lesser one. Why? Why? It's called the Democratic Party two-step. People on the left and the labor movement and social movements vote for the lesser evil in the vain hope that that will stop the greater evil. So what do the Democrats do? They take you for granted, take you for a ride, betray all their promises, and implement, under pressure from the right wing, the agenda of the Republican Party. That's what we've seen decade after decade after decade. Remember, it was Bill Clinton who repealed Glass-Steagall. Remember, it was Bill Clinton who institutionalized the new Jim Crow. Remember, it was Bill Clinton who signed the Defense of Marriage Act. Remember that he set us on the course for war in Iraq. That is a lesson we cannot forget. Hillary Clinton is taking us for granted. She's actually considering a general as her running mate or a centrist anti-abortion Democrat. Those are the choices that she's considering for her running mate. So we have to stand for what we believe in. Vote Jill Stein, build social movements and the labor movement to fight no matter who's in office, which is likely one of these two nightmares, Trump or Clinton. And we have to then build a party that fights in the workplaces, the communities, and the ballot box for a whole new society. We deserve it. We got to fight for it.
So last minute inclusion in our list, James Hodgland from Rights and Democracy.
Hey everybody, it's so good to see so many people here. I'm James Haslam, I'm the director of Rights and Democracy. I live right down the corner, but the Rights and Democracy actually shares this space with the Senior Center. And our offices are right around the corner. But I can definitely say that we have never seen this many people in this room. A few people had any questions, that Burlington, Vermont, and Vermont is the ground zero of the political revolution, we can see here tonight that it absolutely is. To apologize, we don't have an air conditioning unit capable of this side of the crowd. So please take care of yourself. If you're feeling like you're getting too hot, there's an open door here, and take care of yourself. But I just wanted to also just quickly plug, as Ashley mentioned, this political revolution, the organizing that needs to happen, is beyond just the electoral politics. Elections are incredibly important, but we have to keep organizing. And the top of the ticket is incredibly important. But also down ticket matters a lot. And so I'm just here to make a plug for everyone that wants to see the Vermont political revolution move forward, to be able to win things, win a $15 minimum wage, universal health care, and beyond. We have real choices also right here in this neighborhood, in this county and across the state. So we are very thankful to have Dr. Stein here today to be bringing forth the agenda that is the people's agenda in Vermont and across this country. And I'm also very proud to recognize one of the people that is actually running on this kind of agenda in Vermont for local election. This person is someone who's been a member of our organization, a member of her teachers union, is a longtime social justice activist and educator. And she is actually going to be able to win this year with your help. Please give it up for Dottie Ricks.
Hi everybody, I'm so excited to be here amongst all of you revolutionaries. You have no idea how thrilling it is to see all of you. My name is Dottie Ricks, and I'm one of millions of working class people that have answered Bernie's call to the political revolution. I answered that call by choosing to run for the House of Representatives. I am running in a district that is strongly Republican, that has an even stronger Republican machine, against 2 male Republicans. So my probabilities are not great to win. But fortunately, I don't believe in probabilities. I get a lottery ticket every week. What I believe in are possibilities. And Bernie has taught us to believe in possibilities. Whether it's the possibility of a no-name like me to challenge 2 incumbents for the House of Representatives, or whether it is to work for a $15 an hour minimum wage, or universal health care, or to eliminate for-profit prisons, or to eliminate structural racism. The children's author Jill Stein says, anything can happen, child. Anything can be. And Bernie has so Jill Stein is campaigning on the same issues as Bernie and those of us that have answered his call. She's calling for Medicare for all, a national $15 minimum wage, a rapid transition to renewable energy, and an end to mass incarceration. She's gone further than Bernie with her rejection of U.S. militarism. And as a former national board member of Military Families Speak Out, that issue is near and dear to my heart.
That's right.
Jill's campaign is the clear continuation of our political revolution and deserves the broadest and the strongest possible support from all of us. The stronger the vote for Jill Stein, the better positioned we will be to continue to organize for a political revolution in the future. Please join me in giving a warm, working class Vermont welcome to the Green Party's presidential candidate, Jill Stein.
Thank you all so much. It's amazing to be here. Thank you to all of you wonderful speakers. I feel like you have said my whole talk for me. Now I can just enjoy the evening. But really, it is such an honor to be here at the place where the revolution began and where the revolution continues. Thank you for refusing to be shut down by the powers that be that are very busy and working overtime to tell us that the revolution is over, that we are now being shoved back in. They are trying to take the genie, which got out of the bottle, which is all of us, and they're trying to stuff us back into this bottle and support Hillary mainly because she is not Donald Trump. Which is what Bernie had to say when he endorsed her, that I support this woman because she is not Donald Trump. And, you know, that's about as good as lesser evilism does for us, which is why lesser evilism is losing the day for us all. As Ashley was saying, lesser evilism is basically a guarantee that the greater evil will win because people do not come out to vote for politicians or for a political party that's throwing them under the bus. Even if it's not as bad as somebody else might be throwing you under the bus, you just can't bring yourself to come out and go to the polls and check the box. So we have to face the music and realize that the lesser evil is not going to save us. We are the ones we have been waiting for. And I want to assure you of two things tonight. One is that we owe the Bernie movement and all of you such a debt of gratitude for creating this historic moment that we are in. So can we please give you a round of applause? And I want to assure you that this lives on. Our campaign, and you might say the Green Party itself, is really established as a Plan B, as people wake up to realize that Plan A has been bought outright from under us. So we have been joined at the hip, really, with the Bernie campaign for a long time. We've really shared supporters. Most of our supporters, I dare say, are also Bernie supporters, and we're waiting to see what would happen. And I think history has played itself out the way many of us expected. For some of us, the Green Party in this campaign is Plan A, because we've been watching the Democratic Party, and they have a game. It's called the kill switch. So they allow principled campaigns to be seen and heard for a little while. And then they basically sabotage these campaigns. And there are all kinds of ways, whether it's super delegates or Super Tuesdays or stripping the voter rolls in Brooklyn, not counting the votes in California, colluding with the media to basically tell you it's over before the California primary. You know, they have many ways. And they have done this before. This is what they always do ever since George McGovern was able to get the nomination as a peace candidate in 1972. That's when the Democratic Party decided to change the rules of the game, and they created superdelegates and Super Tuesdays. Why? To be sure that that would never happen again. Well, we got news for them. This is going to happen again and again. In real time, over the last year, what we've learned is that you can't have a revolutionary campaign in a counter-revolutionary party. Woo! which is why we need to build that revolutionary party that will be here, not just until November, but until we prevail and we create a world that puts people, planet, and peace over profit. The second thing I wanted to assure you of tonight, they tell us that we don't have the power, that we are marginal, that we don't count, that little people like us could never make a difference. Well, Bernie and you showed them, you just scared the living daylights out of them. In the words of Alice Walker, the wonderful poet and novelist, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. And they're working overtime to try to persuade us of that propaganda. And that is not true. We have the power and we're going to use it. And let me tell you some of the ways we are going to use it. This is why, I really want you to walk out of here tonight knowing that, in fact, we can prevail, not only in our lifetimes, but we can prevail in this election as well. And you may know my background is, I'm not a politician, I'm a physician, and I consider myself as someone who helps us do political therapy and break up with an abusive relationship. Made too many excuses for while they throw us under the bus. And this is about, I think, coming to terms with the fact that we really do have the power. So here concretely is how we have the power. And I'll come back to the agenda, Bernie's agenda, our agenda, which we will go further on, which the American people actually share. We are not a footnote in American values. We are the heart and soul of America's human values, America's community values, which are our values. So, we represent those values, but I want to assure you we have more than right on our side. We also have numbers on our side. And you may or may not be aware, I think there are many people who are aware, that there are actually 42 million people, millennials and older, who are locked into predatory student loan debt. What many people don't know is that that is a winning plurality of the presidential vote. Okay? Only one place for those votes to go, and you're looking at it right now. Because my campaign and the Green Party are the only ones, the only show in town that will cancel that debt like we did for the crooks on Wall Street. Oh, yeah. Victims of that waste, fraud, and abuse on Wall Street. Yes. We can do for a generation and more of young people exactly what we did for those crooks on Wall Street. We bailed them out with a thing called quantitative easing, which is basically a magic trick. And you don't need to know anything more about that, except that it is essentially a digital sleight of hand that the Federal Reserve can accomplish, and guess who appoints the chair of the Federal Reserve? The president does. Okay? So this is why this is like the package of our dreams, because the millennial generation is like the generation for self-mobilizing on a thing called social media and the internet, which they're pretty darn good at. They mobilize with the knowledge, and don't feel like you need to keep this a secret, that millennials and others in debt can basically come out and take over this election and win it, because it doesn't have to go through Congress to cancel that debt. And canceling student debt is a game changer. It is the gateway issue, because there is a generation of young people who's basically been hung out to dry, that is working 2 and 3 part-time, low-wage, temporary jobs, who need to lead us forward. It's always the younger generation who is blazing the trail on social justice, on rights for immigrants, on ending sweatshops, on Black Lives Matter, on climate justice, on ending the unjust wars. It is always the younger generation who has led us forward. So this isn't just for them. This is for all of us. We need them to lead the way to the world that we deserve, that works for all of us. By getting that word out, we can actually bring out enough people to win a 3-way race. And if everybody in debt also brings out a supportive family member, we have enough to win a 2-way race. We have the majority of the American people who are basically being hung out to dry, and that's only one of the ways that we're being hung out to dry. So we should not for a minute accept the propaganda that we are powerless and that we're going to be marginal in this campaign. Instead of splitting the vote, we have the power to flip the vote. We who are the underdog can actually become the top dog in an economy and a society in which it works for all of us. So we can do that. We have the power to do it the minute we stand up with the courage of our convictions. So we have the potential not only to cancel student debt, but it just so happens this generation, has been the victim of the predatory economy and the predatory political system, so they have an agenda. And it's a great agenda. It's an agenda we all share. It's an agenda not only to cancel student debt, it's an agenda to make public higher education free, and it should be. That, oh no, we can't afford it. The reality is, for every dollar we put in to public higher education, we get back $7 in return in revenues and public benefits. So we can't afford not to do this. We know this from the GI Bill after the Second World War. So this is not hypothetical, this is not conjecture, and this is not a subject for guilt tripping either. And when people say, oh no, but they signed that contract, they took on that debt, well, remember Wall Street and the lenders also signed the contract. That contract when they crashed the economy through their waste, fraud, and abuse. So if they tore up their side of the deal, which was making sure that there was a good job on the other end of that college education, they crashed the economy. Those jobs are not there. They are not coming back under the foreseeable future, given the power structure that we have. So if Wall Street got away with tearing up the contract, well, that contract is over and done. Student debt is a thing of the past. There is no better stimulus package for our economy than liberating an entire generation of young people to actually use their passion, their vision, and the skills that they have acquired with great pains. It's time to put those skills to work. so they can create the economy of the 21st century. We need them to lead that way forward. I had this conversation with a panel on Fox Business News. I don't know if anybody has seen that. But I couldn't believe it because they all jumped on me. And, and I just like pushed back on every issue, and they sort of wound up, wow. We could really do this, and it wouldn't cost taxpayers anything. And I said, no, if you do a really bad bailout, like the one we did for Wall Street, that's a really bad bailout. But if you actually expand the productivity of the economy, like young people will do, that is the stimulus package of our dreams. And I couldn't believe it when they were then tweeting out this segment afterwards. They were saying, wow, we could bail out students, and it would be the greatest stimulus package for our economy. I think, there's no reason to give up the ship yet. If we can persuade Fox News, we can go a long way. So let me just name some of the other incredible solutions that can actually fix the crises we face. And the powers that be tell us that, oh no, it's way too complicated, we can never figure it out, we've got inherent conflicts here, we can't both fix the economy and fix the environment, we have to choose. Well, they got it backwards, we cannot fix one unless we are fixing both. That's right. So, here's how we do it. We're calling for a Green New Deal, like the New Deal that got us out of the Great Depression, but this is a Green New Deal, so it will also push back and stop that climate catastrophe that is barreling down on us right now. The Green New Deal can do that. We are calling for what we need, This is not a time to be shy. This is not a time to be discreet and retiring, because the day of reckoning is bearing down on us, as you may know. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration came out with a statement about 3 weeks ago now that hardly got covered by the press, mainly because it was a verbal statement delivered, of all places, at the Conference of Insurance Companies for the United States. So it's written up in their online journal. How many people read the online journal of the insurance companies? A lot of people here. So that's where it was. And what this senior scientist from NOAA said was that they had just received an oh my God report from Antarctica that the ice sheets, guess what, you can imagine, those ice sheets are breaking up way faster than anybody ever would have imagined, especially if they were on the payroll of the fossil fuel companies. They never in a million years would have imagined how fast these ice sheets are breaking up. And they're saying now, on the course that we're on, and remember, we've had now an all-of-the-above democratic solution for 8 years, which has taken the lid off of, absolutely blown to smithereens, the limits on extraction and fossil fuel production. That's where we got with all of the above. And the Democrats, which had 2 houses of Congress, remember, as well as the White House, we could see 9 feet of sea level rise as soon as 2050 on the course that we're on. 9 feet of sea level rise means goodbye, basically, to all coastal population centers, the country of Bangladesh, the island of Manhattan, and much of Boston, and all up and down the coast. It's goodbye to a lot of it, and it's like 600 million refugees, at least, from this first wave of meltdown, which will be followed by wave after wave. So this is not a place we want to go. We don't want to go to 9 feet of sea level rise. And guess what? We can stop it if we start now. Which is why when people say to me, aren't you afraid of Donald Trump? I say, no, I'm afraid of climate change. So what we will do when we turn the White House into a greenhouse, aside from bailing out the students, which is the first thing that we will do, because it's very easy and you can do it with executive power, essentially. Don't quote me on that. They'll get very furious if I say executive power. It's actually the Fed that does it, but the president does appoint the chair of the Fed. So at any rate, that's number one. Because that unleashes the ground troops, basically, because then we got to fight these other battles. But we do have the power to win those battles. And whether it's recall campaigns that we threaten our congresspeople with, if they don't stand up for us, we have won these battles before. Like with the Keystone Pipeline, for example. Like stopping the privatization of the internet. We stopped that in Congress. And then we stopped that in the FCC. So things that we are powerless. So the Green New Deal calls for 20 million good wage jobs. So it's 15 an hour and up. That's the starting point. We're talking about good jobs. 20 million of them that are not only good for the pocketbook of the workers, but are actually good for the health of workers and for the communities. No one is more at risk in our fossil fuel economy than workers who are getting beat up economically and are getting very beat up on their health. Just walking into a fossil fuel job increases your risk of dying on the job by 700% because of how dangerous those jobs are. So there are a gazillion reasons why this is a great thing. We call for 20 million jobs that will transition us on an emergency basis to 100% clean renewable energy, wind, water, sun, no fossil fuels, no nuclear by 2030. Energy and all the installations, construction, manufacturing, etc. that goes into creating that green energy transition. But we also call for a green, healthy, relocalized food system. We call for public transportation which is renewably and efficiently powered, that dovetails with active transportation so that we actually have a right to recreation on our way to transit hubs. You don't have to buy an expensive pass to go to a health club and drive there to get your exercise. Instead, you can do that on your way to catch your train, to get to your school, your workplace, etc. And here's the really good news. This plan not only revives the economy, it prevents climate catastrophe, it makes the friggin' wars for oil obsolete, and the well-kept secret here is that we get so healthy by eating a food system which is good for us instead of our current subsidized food system which is poisoning us. Not only the food, but also suddenly the pollution is gone. So if you actually, and then you're using your muscles to get to your transportation place. So this is like the healthcare system that we have been waiting for. Studies all show that we get so much healthier, it pays for the energy transition just in the health savings alone. It doesn't cost us, it actually saves us money by how much healthier we get. It more than pays for itself. And it's not only the studies that show that, this is also real world experience that I won't take much time for except to reference it. This actually happened in the country of Cuba when its oil pipeline went down in 1991. Suddenly it went fossil fuel free. free, it had to, and it developed an organic food system. It put a lot of people to work as farmers, paying them very well as farmers, and it got out the draft animals, actually, because they didn't have oil to run the tractors or to create pesticides or fertilizers, so it had to be an organic system, and suddenly the pollution was gone, and people were riding their bikes to get places. So you'd think their economy's crashing, their health must have taken a nosedive, you would think, because everybody's stressed out, but exactly the opposite happened. What actually happened was that their death rate, the death rate from diabetes went down 50% within just a couple years. Their death rate from heart attacks and strokes went down 30%, and all-cause mortality went down almost 20%. So, you know, this is actually a win for our economy, a win for global peace and security, it's a win against climate change, and it's a win for our health. Yeah. That is what we have. Other things really quickly, because we only have 5 minutes here, and I want you to be sure to just understand how much power we have. You know, we have a lot of power here, not only because of our numbers, but we have a lot of power because we're able to do the right thing. And our campaign will be the only campaign on the ballot that is not bought and paid for by lobbyists, by corporate money, and by super PACs. We have no we can tell the truth. And there are a couple other truths that are begging to be told. So one is that we can actually have a foreign policy based on international law and human rights. Period. Full stop. It doesn't need to be more of this absolutely catastrophic policy based on economic and military domination, which is blowing back at us with a vengeance. What have we gotten for this policy? Since 2001, this war on terror, we have spent $6 trillion, according to a Harvard study, $6 trillion by the time we've paid for the medical care of our veterans who've been forced to fight these wars for us. We must pay those medical care bills and much more, of course. But that's $6 trillion, which comes to, hold on to your hat, $75,000 per American household for these wars that are working out how? These wars that have basically created failed states, mass refugee migrations, and worse terrorist threats. We're not getting more secure, we're getting less secure. We're seeing that you know, you're going to throw up your hands and walk away? Well, actually, no. What we're going to do about this is a new kind of offensive. It's called a peace offensive, and it starts with a weapons embargo from the U.S. because we are arming all sides of the combat here. We have been applying a flamethrower to the Middle East and all around the world, actually. So we end this massive disaster of weapons sales. We actually have a foreign policy which is none other than a marketing strategy for the military contractors. We need to put an end to that. And in doing so, we create a weapons embargo, and we put a freeze on the bank accounts of those countries that are continuing to fund terrorism. That's us and our allies. Not to go into too much detail here, but remember where this whole ridiculous enterprise started. In Afghanistan, where we created so-called jihadi terrorism. We created that movement in order to fight against the Soviet Union, and we buffed up the Mujahideen and made it a global extremist movement based on Saudi Wahhabism. and the Saudi religious schools, the madrasas, which continue to train terrorists all over the world. So Hillary Clinton herself, in a leaked State Department memo, a series of them, identified the Saudis as still the #1 funders of Sunni terrorism around the world. So we cannot simultaneously fight terrorism while we fund terrorism and arm terrorism. That with the arms embargo and with freezing the funds and by leading the way as a superpower of humanitarianism, not a superpower of militarism. So let me just also add the immigration crisis. I don't want to let the evening go by without saying that #1, we are all immigrants here, unless you happen to be a Native American or an African American. All the rest of us are immigrants. This has been the source of our strength, which is our diversity, and which is our multiculturalism, which is really our strength. If we are exceptional in this country in any way, it is on account of being very diverse and welcoming to people from all over the world. That is what American exceptionalism is really about. So we not only need to create a welcoming path to citizenship for the immigrants who are at the strength, at the core of our economies and our communities and our culture, but we also, the most critical thing we can do to fix this crisis is to stop causing it in the first place by overturning other democracies like in Honduras or Guatemala or El Salvador. To the rigged trade deals like NAFTA, which were not only harmful to workers in this country, but harmful to workers actually all over the Americas, and the source of what turned millions of farmers and factory workers, for that matter, into refugees coming here seeking refuge. So we say, we don't need no friggin' wall, we have to just stop invading other countries. Very quickly, saying that we can have an America and a world that works for all of us, a world that puts people, planet, and peace over profit. That means we stand up and we lead the way in the streets, in our workplaces, on our campuses, and in the voting booth. As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, it never will. We need to be that demand and bring it into the political marketplace. Of fear, which we're told, you know, vote against your fears rather than for your values. That politics of fear has a track record now, certainly since Bush Nader Gore. The politics of fear brought us everything we were afraid of. All the reasons we were told to vote for the lesser evil, because we didn't want the offshoring of our jobs, the meltdown of the climate, the massive Wall Street bailouts, the attack on our civil liberties, on immigrants, the expanding prison state complex. All of those things we've gotten by the droves because we allowed ourselves to be silenced and to let a lesser evil, predatory politics speak for us.
That's right. That's right.
The lesser evil paves the way to the greater evil. What Donald Trump is riding on, this wave of economic misery, was created, in fact, by neoliberalism from none other than the Clintons. So putting another Clinton in the White House is not the solution, it is the problem. problem, and by that I mean the Democrats. They could fix the issue of splitting the vote. They could fix it with the stroke of a pen with a voting solution called ranked choice voting that they could implement right now in 36 hours on an emergency basis. The first time I was tricked into running for office, which was back in 2002 against Mitt Romney running for governor in Massachusetts, we actually filed this bill with a progressive legislator in Massachusetts where there was an 85% Democratic majority. They could have passed any bill they wanted and prevented any potential for that election to be so-called spoiled by having a true public interest candidate in the race. So we said, here, you've got it, just pass that bill and ensure that there will be no splitting of the vote, no spoiling of the election. 15 years later, they have still not allowed that bill out of committee. Why is that? Because the Democrats rely on fear. Why do they rely on fear? Because they are not your friend. That alone. That alone is reason enough to stand up and stand our ground and say that we are casting a vote on behalf of ourselves, our future, an America and a world that works for all of us. Together we can build that world that puts people, planet, and peace over profit. The power to create that world is not far away in our hopes. It's not far away in our dreams. It's right here. It's in Vermont. It's in this room. Together, it is in our hands. We are going to make it happen right here, right now. Thank you so very much. Let's do this.